I always say none. They saved their own lives by calling the hotline,
Yeah.
and then they did whatever they needed to do during and after that call. They got to do the action. They got to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
We just made it easier and more possible for them to connect to help and hope.
This is Kathryn Goetzke, host of the Hope Matrix podcast. We are here to share science, stories, and strategies for how to hope. I'm the Chief Hope Officer of the Shine Hope Company, and Shine is the mnemonic for how we teach hope. So when we talk about hope, we talk about how we use stress skills, happiness habits, inspired actions, nourishing networks, and eliminating challenges, which are our thinking patterns that get in the way of our ability to hope. Hope is a skill. You can measure hope, you can teach hope, and you can start practicing skills to activate higher hope in your life today. And on this Hope Matrix podcast, we aim to bring in guests, experts in science, people with stories, and those that have strategies for activating hope in your life. Well, hello, friends, listeners, all of you out there. My name is Kathryn Goetzke, host of the Hope Matrix podcast. Oh, I'm so excited. I have with you today my dear friend. We've been on this journey together for so long, so long. His name is Reese Butler. He actually started the suicide hotline, 1-800-SUICIDE. And I met him back when I was starting my own company and nonprofit when I lived in Annapolis, Maryland. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm so grateful to be talking to you. It's been a while. We were just kind of sharing. It's been a while, but I feel like we're passing ships all the time. And yeah, I'm super excited and welcome. And thank you for taking time out to join us and talk more about what you're up to and what you've been up to and, the journey along the way.
Okay. And thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I love your book, and I love everything that you're doing in terms of spreading hope and teaching hope. To me, it is the most important ingredient in all the work that I do and everybody who works in the field of mental health and certainly suicide prevention. So you're like that flower behind you, the bright shining spot of no matter how dark and how hopeless somebody might be. We know Kathryn is shining a big spotlight into that in that dark hole. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And trying anyway. It's not easy, It's a simple
Oh,
construct, how we teach hope, and it's not easy. When you're in the pits of despair or when you feel that total sense of helplessness, learning how to manage those things in healthy ways. Again, it takes skills, and it took a lot of my own kind of self journey and research and my curiosity for figuring out the why and being told I was at high risk of suicide and knowing the things that were being taught weren't going to help me, and if I wanted to save my own life, I really had to get to root cause. So, yeah, which we found to be hopelessness. So, again, not easy. And yet, with skills and tools, it's like one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, we can navigate our way through. So,
we can, and both of us are survivors. Me having lost my dear wife Kristen, for whom the Hope Center's named, to suicide, and the most ironic part of my journey is that literally 2 months before I met her, I attempted to end my life by hanging. And it was under the influence of alcohol, which impaired my judgment, obviously. Uh, and it was in the next morning when I woke up and had a big lump on my head and obviously survived. I was like, I'm such a screw up. I can't even kill myself right, was my first thought. And the universe, being what it does, sent me Kristen 2 months later, and we spent 8 incredible years together. Roller coaster, mind you, but changed my life forever. And
mhm.
losing her to suicide, me dying by suicide was certainly more than plausible. I didn't wear seatbelts and lived a very let's put it this way: I did not take care of myself in any way, shape, and form. Should have died when I was age 10 with a fractured skull with a baseball bat. But losing her, the last person in the world I ever would have thought would take her life, because she wore seatbelts. She didn't put anything bad in her body. She always was doing yoga and taking care of herself, where I was just doing the exact opposite. So I obviously went to school, learned about depression and bipolar disorder and OCD and uh, certainly borderline personality disorder, which is what one of many diagnoses that she suffered from. And I didn't realize at the time when she was alive, but that's the most severe, because you don't get that pause to think about your actions, that impulsivity that people with borderline personality disorder have puts them at very high risk. Then the other side of the coin is, just like yourself and myself, she had lost her grandfather to suicide. So she was a survivor of suicide, which also put her at risk. So every time you and I get into that deep, dark place because of our losses and the pain and suffering that we have gone through, it's imperative that we're able to have that support system, like each other and other people in our lives, that can help catch us when we don't even see ourselves falling into that pit of despair. And
Yeah.
being able to instill hope, or have hope instilled into us, is the key.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the critical things and the first things we teach in Hope is that S in our Shine framework, the stress skills and how we identify and manage our stress response. And what you talk about, that impulsivity is such a important component of suicide prevention. And coming to understand, and for me personally, when I was triggered by something in my environment, I'd get into that state of fight, flight, freeze, now fawn. And when you're in that state, you have no ability to access your frontal lobe, your critical thinking, your problem solving. Like, does this make sense? You're just in such a state of panic and angst, and so to me, that was the first key to hope, learning how to identify that stress response and how to manage it in healthy ways. Because we're going to have it, we're going to go into those states, but learning to identify, oh, I feel it coming on, I feel that state, and then learning how to intervene, how to take that time, the breathing that we know improves our heart rate variability, so it calms down our autonomic nervous system. It is so critical for, to me, suicide prevention, because that's such a key part. When we're triggered, that's when we do those impulsive things. And until we can identify those triggers and learn how to self-regulate and manage them, and to not make any decisions when we're in that state, to completely do something, find something, that's a healthy intervention. That's, if we don't, that's when we turn to those addictive things, or that violent behavior, or the self-harm, or the cutting, or all of those things, or ultimately suicide. And so when we started teaching Hope, that was, to me, the most important thing and the first key, because of how lethal, if we don't learn how to control that impulse, can be potentially.
Yeah, yeah. I've got a new one that I've started using, and it's a breathing technique. And the idea is to close your eyes and do that deep, slow breathing, but at the same time, have your eyes go back and forth under your eyelids, almost like a uh, side to side mantra. And what it does is it actually relaxes the brain. And let's say you get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and you can't sleep, or you think you can't sleep. If you do that same exercise,
Mhm.
generally within 5 minutes of doing that, you'll be sound asleep. So it does help calm. And if you find yourself in a uh, fight or flight mode, thinking you have to make a decision in a panic state, just close your eyes, do that deep breathing, and
Mm.
then, make the eyes go back and forth, and it, uh, sends a message to the brain that, uh, you are checking out.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and you talked about alcohol and alcohol, uh, makes us more impulsive, completely more impulsive. We do riskier things, and when I started researching, I've been in recovery over 21 years. When I started researching what alcohol does to the system, I thought, "Oh my god, like, I'm just setting myself up," and, my dad had a bunch of vodka before he took his life, and we know that's the case in a lot of suicides, and so, yeah, it's really important to know what these substances do to our body and our ability to think clearly. They reduce that ability. So,
Yeah, it does, and it doesn't mean that the alcohol makes somebody suicidal, but if they're already depressed and suicidal, our inhibitions keep us from taking that action, taking that next step. But if you're under the influence of alcohol or any other substance that lowers your inhibitions, then it's a recipe for disaster because, as you say, many suicides. We've heard statistics well above 50% of suicide attempts in the United States are under the influence of some drug or alcohol lowering
yeah,
the inhibitions. So it's
yeah. Yeah, and I wasn't depressed when I attempted to take my life, so it wasn't depression, it was that impulse control and fueled by alcohol, It just it's such a lethal combination. Um, what else do you do for, I think another thing that's really cool that you do, not to answer for you, but, is the suicide hotline when you're in your stress response and you can't, like, find call someone. And to me, calling the suicide hotline or the crisis text lines are, a great tool and intervention to talk to someone to get you calmed down, to help de-escalate that situation and get you out of that stress response. If you can't call your friends or whom, it's a really good solution. So why don't we talk a little bit about that? I think the history that you've had in suicide prevention is so fascinating. We were just talking about it was 15 years ago, I think that um we're at an event of yours, but yeah, tell us how you got started in that, a little bit of that journey.
well after Kristen died, I received a check from her work. It was a 1 year death benefit, and so I was looking for an organization that was working in suicide prevention and most specifically postpartum psychosis, postpartum depression. And when I found that not only was there nothing going on in that particular field, there was nothing going on in suicide prevention in 1998 on a national level, nor was there even a suicide hotline, which to me was just insane because we had 1-800 plumber, we had 1-800 bathtubs, we had whatever vanity number you could possibly think of existed, but not a suicide hotline. So on September 18th, 1-800 suicide went live. And the only reason why it went live was because I couldn't reserve the number. You had to actually make it live, ring somebody somewhere, FCC rules. And so I said, well, ring it to my house. No one's going to call it. And so September 18th, 1998, it went live. And uh, the first time I picked up the phone and actually talked to somebody was a woman up in Seattle who was nervously asking what it was that she reached because she just dialed 1-800 and then spelled out suicide. And when I told her what I was doing and how I'd lost my wife to suicide, she told me she just wanted to know that her two little kids were going to be okay when she took this pile of pills in this hotel room that night. And I was like 6 months into my grief work at this point. I said, I don't know what to say other than please don't. I said, would you mind if I get somebody on the phone who does know what they're doing? I can patch you in. I got a second line here. So I called the Covenant House in New York and I talked to the director there and I explained the situation. And she said, I'll be happy to take the call over, Reese, and patched the two together. And for 2.5 hours, both lines were lit. The next morning, I got a call from the woman in Seattle. And she said, I just want to be able to thank the woman I talked to last night. She saved my life. I'm back home with my kids and I have an appointment with a therapist. And I was like, oh my God, I was like the boy with the finger in the dike. I couldn't shut the line off, but I needed, number one, to have a crisis center be answering it. Number two, I wanted to learn everything I could about how to answer a crisis call, how to de-escalate a person's suicidal crisis. And what I learned very quickly was there were basically two different systems. There was the uh, warm line, caring, the Samaritans. I'll sit there with you in your pain, acknowledge your feelings, reflect back what you're saying to me. And then there's the clinical side, the what we call the interventionist model, where they do a risk assessment to determine how likely it is that you're going to attempt suicide during the call or shortly thereafter, and then to be able to get permission to send rescue in the form of an ambulance, get the person into a hospital situation. We're talking completely opposite, polar opposite responses, right?
Uh,
And so I'm like, I'm figuring that the intervention model is probably the better of the two because it's more of a medical model, right?
uh,
And so uh, 2 years later, I managed to persuade Senator Kennedy and Senator Wellstone and Senator Pete Domenici to fund the expansion of 1-800-Suicide. But the survivor community was not in favor of hotlines, so they made us spend 1/3 of the money on evaluation. And so I'm like, well, at least we'll figure out which of these two systems works better. So, which one do you think came out on top, Kathryn?
oh, the Samaritan.
I wish I could say it was the
Ah,
Samaritans.
no
I
way.
also wish I could say it was the interventionist model.
Oh
It
no.
was it was neither. What it was how the call taker interacted with the caller. Did they gain the caller's confidence and trust?
Trust.
Most importantly, did the caller believe that the call taker actually cared about them?
Wow.
If they could get that message across that they did care and it was a genuine connection,
Yeah.
the outcome of the call was always good. It didn't matter was the interventionist model, let me ask
Wow.
questions, or it was the good side model. I'm here to support you in your darkest moment. So what we spent $3 million to find out what that you have to care about people to prevent suicide, which to
Oh
me
my
the
God.
most remarkable outcome of it. Uh, Kind of a waste of $3 million, but because we already knew that part.
Yeah. Right. 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 Wow. That's like before. I mean, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't. I
No,
mean, that the technology on that alone.
99, 2000.
Wow.
The National Mental Health Awareness Campaign launched in 2000 out of the White House and ran our number on all the ads and brochures. Which that year we took over 1 million calls.
The
And
first year.
no, it was into the second year. We'd already completed a full year from September '98 to August '99. The
Yeah.
campaign launched in May of 2000, so we're about a year and a half into it. First year, it was somewhere north of 200,000. Uh, but the first full year with the National Mental Health Awareness Campaign, it went over 1 million calls. And we had, I think at that time, about 40 crisis centers that answered those 1 million calls. So it was a Herculean effort.
Wow.
Sure.
That is incredible.
It
I
is.
mean, I mean, there were no other suicide hotlines in the world, right? I mean, that's
No, we were the
startling.
first. And more
Um,
importantly, uh, to get the calls answered locally or in the town, city where the person was calling from, we needed to add hundreds of crisis centers to the network to be able to make that happen. And in the beginning, crisis centers didn't want to join because they didn't want to lose their connection to their community and have their calls being routed to another crisis center that maybe they didn't agree with how they answered calls or how they intervened on the person in crisis's behalf. So remember the interventionist model versus the Samaritan's model. Those folks were polar opposites of each other, and so they certainly didn't want their their regular callers ending up in the hands of the interventionists because it would be foreign to them that
Mhm.
and how they would react.
Yeah.
It was a very difficult network to put together, and if it weren't for a few amazing pioneers like Jay Nagdamon, who was at the D.D. Hirsch Community Mental Health Center, which was
Yeah.
the nation's first local community suicide hotline, which began in 1963
Oh my gosh.
as an
Wow.
experiment.
Uh-huh.
They didn't even set out to be a suicide hotline. It was a clinical study that Norm Farbrow, the founder of AAS, um, he ran this ad in a LA Times and said, if you're suicidal, call this number between 9 and 5, literally between 9 a.m.
Oh my gosh, right.
And
Yeah.
so he was there with the clinical students at the end of the day, reviewing, the notes from the people who called that day for the study, right?
Uh,
And so it was like around 5:15 in the afternoon. The phone rang.
uh.
All looked at each other like, "What do we do?
What do we do?
Should we answer it?" It did, and so
Uh,
that technically became the first genuine suicide hotline phone call because it wasn't part of the study.
uh,
And
sure enough.
that was at UCLA, Neurological Psychiatric Institute, and
Uh,
and
got
it
it.
eventually transferred over to D.D. Hirsch Community Mental Health Center. And uh, when I met Jay Nagdamon in '98, he helped write the guidelines for how all crisis centers that would answer calls from out of suicide, how they would actually be handled. And he wrote it with such diplomacy to cover both the risk assessment side and the warm helping non-interventionist side.
Nice.
Quite amazing.
Yeah. That's incredible. So there were places throughout the US that were answering crisis calls, but it was like a local crisis number. So what you did is you created an 800 number, a suicide hotline, so that you could then route them to all of those local numbers.
Yeah.
It's an easy number to remember when you're in crisis. You can't think clearly. You can't like how do I look up my local number? You think about all that stress. And so, wow, that's amazing. 1-800 plumber
Yeah, we
inspired
wanted
me.
to be the McDonald's for crisis hotlines.
Yeah.
My mantra, and you're there in Chicago, so the Wrigley chewing gum company,
Yeah.
they knew more about when kids bought their gum, where they bought their gum, where it was placed in the store, what time
Mhm.
of the day they most likely bought it, right?
Yeah.
I always said, we want suicide hotlines to be on par with bubble gum."
Yeah.
That was the goal.
That's awesome.
And
Yeah.
and it took 10 years to build the network, and it certainly was probably the biggest and most gratifying achievement of my life, other than obviously my children.
Yeah. Oh, so amazing. I mean, incredible. How many lives you've saved, you know?
I always say none. They
Yeah.
saved their own lives by calling the hotline,
Yeah.
and then they did whatever they needed to do during and after that call. They got to do the action. They got to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
We just made it easier and more possible for them to connect to help and hope. But the bottom line is, uh, you know,
Gotta do the work. Yep.
you gotta do the work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I don't take any credit for their lives being saved.
Yeah.
I'll take their appreciation for the ease by which they were able to access those services,
Yeah.
and they always should have been. Yeah,
Yeah.
people don't realize we didn't even have 911 until 1969,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
and 911 is still not available in 50% of the geographic United States.
Wow.
Uh,
Like
uh,
rural areas, probably.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Alaska. I mean,
Yeah.
they call 911. What are they gonna do? Send a
I know. Yeah.
husky? Yeah.
Right.
Uh,
See the dog sled.
Well,
Uh,
one of the other, side, accomplishments from the hotline world was, I was co-founder of NESIC, the National Essential Services Interoperability Council, which was 911, 811, 711 for the hearing, 611 and 511 for inner city traffic, and then 311 for inner city repairs, 211, which is for uh, social services, Meals on Wheels, United Way.
Yeah.
And so with 800 suicide and the N11 numbers, we would get together every 6 months and work on how do we share data and be able to transfer calls to each other without losing those calls and without that transfer not being warranted. We don't want a cold transfer. We want to make sure all three parties are on the call before the first party drops out.
Yeah.
And so one of my first meetings, I'm sitting next to the guy who started 811, which is Call Before You Dig, the public utility.
Uh,
And so I was curious how many states had the service and what the geographic coverage was. And I said, "This is Bill Kiger." I said, "Bill, tell me what your coverage is like in the United States. Is it as much as 911?" He said, "Oh no, we have 100% of the United States." I said, "What? How could you have 100%?" He said, "Look, if someone's going to be digging up in Nome, Alaska, we want to know before they hit a gas line and blow themselves up."
all right. Yeah.
And I said, "So who's paying for that?" He said, "Oh, the utility companies are paying the bill." So I was thinking, like, wait a second, human beings that want to end their life because of all the despair and lack of hope, and we can't connect everybody in America. This is sad.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
was a huge wake up call for me to realize that gas pipelines were more important than humans.
Then, yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Or the liability associated with getting sued if someone does that, you know? Uh,
Call before you dig.
not, wow. Wow. Well, yeah, kudos to you. I mean, I always say too, I can teach you how to hope, but I can't make you hopeful. And I think that's the same sentiment. People have to take personal responsibility, like, for their life. And it's not easy. And there are
Uh,
a million reasons people can fight for their hopelessness. And it takes intention and learning and skills and neuroplasticity and getting up every day and doing the things again and again and again to build hope, you know? And it's so important that we every day practice the skills that we know can support us and along on that journey.
Yeah, there's some practical tools that we use on the hotline, and I use when I do my mental health fairs on college campuses. And I always say to people, uh, think back to that moment in time when you actually were happy, where you really enjoyed being alive. Uh,
Mhm.
it may have been when they were 8 years old,
Yeah.
but think back to whatever that time is. And if tomorrow the things that happen today would allow you to reconnect with that sense of joy or loving life as you did at that moment,
Mhm.
wouldn't you prefer to still be alive no matter how tough this moment is right now?
Yeah.
And and what I hear from people that are struggling with the real severe chronic mental illnesses, like bipolar disorder, like schizophrenia, um, is things are never going to get better. I'm going to always feel like this the rest of my life. And so I use as a Hail Mary pass. Have you ever tried getting a vagus nerve implant? And normally it's the response I get is, "What the heck is that?" And at the fairs, we always have a graphic showing it. And it's basically a little copper wire that gets inserted into the back of the neck into the vagus nerve, and there's a little regulator that the person has on their chest that they can tap to send a little electrical impulse to the wire, which then sends it to the vagus nerve, which triggers happy thoughts, uh,
Mhm. And
artificially.
happy hormones, like
Happy hormones. Yes.
serotonin, those are our happiness habits. Serotonin, dopamine,
Right.
oxytocin, things we need to feel good, you know?
But the thing I point out to people is you may not qualify to get the treatment and may not be the right one for you. I'm not saying it for that reason.
Yeah.
I'm saying it because it cost the company that brought it to market over $1 billion with a B to do all the clinical trials before they could do it on humans.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sure.
and something just north of 100,000 people in the last 20 years have been able to qualify for the treatment. So you think about how much money $1 billion is, and for this one little obscure treatment that nobody has ever heard of, except for the 100,000 people that got it.
Mhm.
Know that every company that is working in this sphere, this is the holy grail. They're all looking for the magic pills, the magic module treatment that is going to help each of the mental illnesses. We know
Yeah.
just a tiny,
So little. Yeah.
tiny
And
infinitesimal amount.
we also have so much power within us. I mean, there are ways we can, and that's what our happiness habits are about, is about learning how to self-produce that dopamine, that serotonin, the oxytocin, the things that make us feel good that we need to feel good to help improve our mood. And it's so important to do that intentionally. The more challenges you have, the more stress hormones you have. The more you have to do those stress skills to help manage those stress hormones in healthy ways because they can, lead to disease. And then the happiness habits as well. We have to be so intentional about how we get them. We can get them from addiction, addictive substances, smoking, drinking, we can get them from violence, we can get them from bullying. These are all things that can generate those pleasurable hormones, but they're not healthy for us. So let's learn, how do we get those things in other ways? Painting, drawing, singing, exercise, nutrition, good sleep, all of these things, we can be these self-producing. I mean, I've, used to be on a lot of meds, and thankfully I have really learned how to regulate my own system. It's not that I don't get so sad. Like, I get so sad, I feel so deeply, and yet I know how to manage it in a healthier way now. I don't turn to the things to like self-soothe or use, like, I know how to manage the impulses around it, and I do things that are more healthy for me. But, like, it's about learning it, and if we're not taught the skills for how to do that and how to, then, how can we? So, I do think science and the research has come a long way, and we also know so much more now than we used to know. Like, exercise is effective as antidepressants. They've shown that. And I know it feels so hard to exercise when you're, not in the state to, and we know it's like a prescription. It's like taking a prescription. It's like, do whatever, even if it starts with just a walk around the block or, a shower or making the bed or something.
Well, like you said, you got to build the habits so that you don't get to that place where it's hard to go out and do the exercise. If you're already building it in, you're already building in the protective factors. So
Yeah.
it's got you got to be intentional, uh,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
fake it till you make it,
Yeah.
if you will. The
Yeah.
the art one is huge, as is music.
Music, I know.
If you listen to the symphonies, they literally are help realign the brain.
Yeah.
You can't help but uh, feel good when you listen to a quality music piece that was written by Mozart, for instance, or Tchaikovsky. Uh, there's a reason why they are the classics.
Yeah.
My favorite story about how non-drug, non even physical activity can save a life was uh, I learned this shortly after I lost Kristen. I went to a grief support group, and it was for people who lost their spouse, not to suicide. It was just lost their spouses.
Right.
And there was a gentleman there who was an oncologist, and he was talking about his wife had stage 4 cancer, and this was in San Francisco, and all he could do is ameliorate her pain and suffering. There was no treatment, there was no drugs, anything that could work for her. And she was a painter, but at this point she couldn't even lift her arms. So he went down into the Castro and found an artist that painted in a similar style to his wife, and he hired the guy to come to the hospital and set up an easel and paint one last painting for his wife to have her direct what she wanted on the painting. And by the end of 30 days of this artist painting this painting, with it coming to life, she was in full remission. She wasn't trying to cure herself or
Right.
her cancer. She just wanted to see her painting get completed.
Yeah.
So the human brain, it was doing everything every day to make sure that it would stave off the cancer, so she would live to uh, get the next command out about what she wanted in the painting. So it
Wow.
shows how powerful the human brain is in terms of our healing. Uh, the thought process, having positive thoughts, is so critical,
Mhm.
no matter how negative things may be around you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that's, pursuing our passions is another happiness habit, activating our purpose, why we're here. When we can really get into that, it can generate so much joy internally. Yeah, so powerful. Wow. Very
I've always said the most selfish thing that any person can do for themselves is to lose themselves in the service of others, because the 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 healing, the positive stuff that comes back is 10 times whatever you put out there in helping somebody, especially somebody who's less fortunate or has nothing. Just seeing the reaction and feeling the reaction of somebody that you're helping unconditionally, not because it's your job or somebody else is watching.
Yeah.
It's that human emotion that you get helping somebody is just incredible. And if we could somehow get people to just go out in faith and try it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah, do it.
it
Yeah.
could be an animal shelter, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be humans that you're helping. It's just you unconditionally helping somebody who's less fortunate, like a stray animal.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we have people that go out and teach hope in communities to children, you can download the educator guides and go out and do it. We had a woman that lost her daughter in Northern Ireland to suicide, and that next year she was out teaching the school classmates, how to get to hope, how to navigate hopelessness, how to get to hope, and it can be so healing, from our own place and you and I do are living examples of that too, we do this work really for that, and it's healing in so many ways.
It
Can
is so rewarding,
Yeah,
and to be able to see somebody who seems to have lost all hope, um, be able to have that light
yeah,
be reignited. There's no greater gift that you can
yeah,
give to somebody that has lost all hope than
yeah,
instill that seed of hope into them.
absolutely. So the I is inspired actions, and that's really goals. So setting goals, overcoming obstacles to goals, re-goaling. And I look at your journey and to what you wanted to do and how it's changed over the years and how you keep going. Um, do you want to speak to that at all?
Oh, absolutely. Uh, Before I even realized that there wasn't a national suicide hotline, I looked at where Kristen had her first what I call break with reality. It was at Florida State University in her sophomore year, and the counseling department. This is 1989. The counseling department sent her home, which was a standard practice back then at FSU and many other campuses. And her parents, Baker acted her, put her into a psychiatric facility for 21 days. And so she came out of that not trusting her parents, not trusting the counselor at school, and basically saved up money and moved out to California, where I met her the next year. So my original goal was to go to college campuses and teach young women like Kristen how not to end up in falling through the cracks like she did. And so my original passion, my original motivation was to go on college campus and do that. And when I realized that there wasn't even a suicide hotline to put on a brochure to hand out as a resource, kind of derailed me. But then in 2010, you may recall the Pick Up the Phone tour that we launched with Blue October.
Mhm.
That was our first tour that ended up on college campuses. And ever since then, that's been over 300 events ago. And every single event, no matter how small or how large it is, I've got stories of incredible uh, hope generated, people interacting with the counseling department that otherwise never would have, people that felt lost who now felt connected. It is, to me, it's the most incredibly rewarding and fulfilling mission I could ever have hoped for. And so
Mm.
when people, 'cause I'm going to turn 70 at the end of
70?
70 at the end of next month. So all my friends are always saying, "So Reese, when are you going to retire?" I say, "Well, I'm technically retired. I do this because I enjoy doing it, and the rewards are just incredible." Tomorrow. I'm driving to Ohio to do our second event at Muskingum University, and it's going to be outdoors. And I remember the last one like it was yesterday. It was a year and a half ago. It was in spring. So uh, I can't wait to get there. And then next week we're going to be down in Alabama doing Jacksonville State University for the third time,
Uh-huh.
and then fly up to Michigan to Albion to do our fifth event there. And then the next
Wow.
day, we're going to be at Central Michigan University, right across the lake from you.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
but
And I mean, think about all of the twists and turns and how many obstacles you've faced, how many times you've had to come up with new roadmaps and regoal and financial and changes and government and just everything. And it's like that's when we get like it's that hopelessness we feel in those moments of meeting those roadblocks that it feels so easy to stop that we want to stop. And so what has enabled you to keep going, to keep continuing to find ways around those roadblocks?
you for one, I remember when I hit uh, there was a series of walls when the federal government stopped funding 800 suicide and actually set up a competing suicide hotline. It was extremely frustrating, and our phone bill was $50,000 a month. And I remember the month that I met you, we were short $10,000, and you said, "Come on over and meet me for lunch." I went and had lunch with you at Phillips Seafood Restaurant in Annapolis, down at the public wharf. And at the end of the lunch, you wrote out a check for $10,500 to cover the phone bill. Um, but that wasn't the one where uh, I felt hopeless and attacked. All my hard work, for naught, and I was going into a negative spiral, a downward spiral. And I remember talking to you and sharing this negativity, and you were like, "Stop that!" And you were like getting sucked down into that negative pipe. That is not going to work. You need to think positively. I was like, "She's right." Yeah. And you caught me off guard. Normally, people are like, "Oh yeah, it sounds really bad,"
Yeah, I'd go down that with you.
And that, yeah, you refuse to get down that path. It was your own protection, probably for your own mental health and well being, but it stopped me. And every time after that, I think that was like around 2011 or 12. Uh, every time after that, that I found myself starting to go into that path, I would think of you, and I would say, "Wait, what would Kathryn say right now?" I know what she would say. And if you were handy, I'd pick up the phone and call you or text you. And sure enough, it's exactly what you would say.
Oh,
So
oh.
you have to have people in your life that don't enable. that maladaptive coping mechanisms that, like the drinking, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the substances or
Mm-hmm.
sex, which is not a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's you want to be doing that when you're in a good mood as opposed to trying to put yourself in a good mood.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
So it's
Ab-
having that network of people that you can call, you can text, you can go and see, and in my life, miraculously show up in those moments too. That makes a difference. You have an internal, conversation, sure, but if you're if you're a people person and need that support of other people, make sure you only have people in your life that you reach out to that will help you stop that downward spiral,
yeah.
help you put the brakes on, and then uh, get that positive conversation or those positive activities. Let's go for a bike ride. Let's go for a run, type activity, and that's what works for me. And music, I play in a garage band with some other guys, and um, I'll call them up, say, I don't know about you guys, but I need some therapy tonight,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
they're over in a flash, and by the end of the night, we're jumping around and banging the taillights out of our equipment, and
Yeah.
right, they
Right. Right. Yeah.
I'm not a finesse
Yeah.
musician. I'm a drummer.
Nice.
They say
Drop.
drummers are people who like to hang around with musicians.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Yeah, and I mean, it's important to acknowledge our hard feelings and our, our stressors and our sadness and to experience them. And yet what I also know to be true that it's very easy for me to get stuck in that. And I just, like you said, I go into a drum and I go down and down. And so it's important to honor those emotions and to express them and feel them and not disregard them. And then what can we do about it? Like, I think we've really got to work hard to get to what can we do about what are the steps that we can take? Like, I think you're brilliant, as you know I do, and creative and a problem solver. And so it's okay, these are the problems. Now, like, what are we going to do to fix them? Like, we can. And when we go out for that bike ride or we go to that music or we do those things, that's when our brain starts percolating those solutions that we can come up with and that we have the ability to create. So
Uh,
there's new research on venting that, yeah, it's really not helpful to just vent, vent, vent. And it's,
and speaking of bike riding, I did two weeks ago get to go bike riding with my good friend and your friend Frank Warren from Post Secret, and it is now.
nice. Yeah. Nice. Well, good. Well, yeah, we're gonna be visiting with Frank soon. So, but for now, any other final words of wisdom and
To me, the most important one is never take hope away from someone. It may be all that they have.
mm, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Reese, your journey has been so absolutely incredibly fascinating. And I I don't think you have a book out, but
Not yet.
you need a I mean,
Every time,
yeah.
every time I tried to complete it, my life changed
I
something.
know.
Wait, I can't put that out with this ending.
Yes. Right, right. That's so funny. Well, yeah, it's
But I think
fascinating.
I'm finally there. I finally made peace with putting out the stories I think that are going to inspire hope and
Yeah.
tell the story of how we got here, and most importantly, some of those unsung heroes, those Christ Center directors that in the early stages, without them, the network never could have been built. So, uh, I, after this tour gets done in November, I'm gonna recommit myself to finishing it, hopefully by Christmas.
Nice. Nice. Well, there you have it, everyone. The inventor of the suicide hotline, Reese Butler, and the Kristen Brooks Hope Center. So your website is what's the easiest website?
I'm alive.org.
IMALIVE.org. Check it out. Learn more about Reese. Give him lots of gratitude for all he has done for this world. Really a true champion and innovator in the mental health space. And I am so grateful to know you and grateful we've had this journey together and excited about what is next to come. So thank you all to listeners for listening in. Feel free to share if so inspired. Wishing you all a blessed day. The crisis text line. Now, what is the easiest way? What are the easiest hotlines, do you think?
988.
988.
Any easier than that.
Can't get any easier than that. You heard it from the horse's mouth.
And you can text to 988
Yep.
or just call
Text
the
or call.
988 and talk to any one of the more than 200 crisis centers that make up the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline.
Yep. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your work. And again, thank you all for listening in and wishing you all a blessed day. Keep shining. So thank you all for listening in to the Hope Matrix podcast. We want to shine a light that hope is teachable, hope is measurable and teachable, and provide you with actionable insights for how you can start activating hope in your life today, and provide a framework so you can start talking about hope with other people and practice these skills together because we are better with hope. Please feel free to check out theshinehopecompany.com where we list all of our resources around how to hope. We have a lot of free programs for how to hope, including the 5-day challenge, our hope infographic with a lot of skills that showcase how to hope and articles of how to incorporate hope into your life. We have the Hope Beat Weekly, which is a weekly newsletter that shares strategies for hope. We have a My Hope Story template, so you can write your own hope story today. Also, My Hope Hero, so we can share what our heroes are doing to activate hope in their lives. And this is especially good with youth, so they can start looking up to people that have overcome similar challenges to them and seeing how these heroes use the Shine Hope framework. We have a Hopeful Minds for Teens program, a Hopeful Minds overview, educator guides. We have a new evidence-based college course, so you can activate hope on the college campus. There are programs in the workplace, overview courses, 90-minute courses for learning the what, why, and how to hope. What I want you to know about hope is it's a skill. You've got to practice these skills to become hopeful. It's easy to fall into despair and helplessness when we deal with challenges in life, and it takes intentional work and practice to get to hope. And yet it is always possible. So no matter what life brings, keep shining hope. Thanks so much for listening in. Have an awesome day. And of course, I've got to add that this program is designed to assist you in learning about hope. It should not be used for medical advice, counseling, or other health-related services. I, Fred, the Shine Hope Company, and myself, Kathryn Goetzke, do not endorse or provide any medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I am not a medical doctor. The information provided here should not be used for the diagnosis or treatment of any medical condition and cannot be substituted for the advice of physicians, licensed professionals, or therapists who are familiar with your specific situation. Consult a licensed medical profession or call 911 if you are in need of immediate assistance. And be sure to know the crisis hotline, 988, if you are in need of support. Thanks a bunch for listening. Take good care of yourself and keep shining hope.